Okay, more now on the legal changes in Israel. I want to bring you some live pictures from West Jerusalem. Thousands of protests have been gathering near the Israeli parliament after that decision was made earlier on in the last few hours or so. The United States is watching the developments in Israel. Kimberly Halkett is live for us in Washington, D.C. How is the White House reacting to all of this, Kimberly?
We've had statements from the National Security Council, part of the White House, as well as the State Department, both speaking from the same sheet of music. And what they're essentially saying is that the feeling is from the Biden administration that it's unfortunate this vote took place. You'll have to remember that the president himself actually sent out a statement just hours before the vote urging the prime minister to change his mind. That did not happen. And now the feeling is that it's unfortunate this went ahead and really essentially moved ahead with the slimmest possible majority. Now, when it comes to these kinds of changes, the view of the White House is that this needs to be done with consensus when there is democratic change, and that is not what the White House is seeing on the ground. Just the opposite, as demonstrated by the fact that there are thousands taking to the streets in protest. It is the view of the White House that this has really divided the Israeli population. And so that is of grave concern to the United States. So the statement that is being issued is one that it's really a feeling that there is a need for the Israeli leaders to work together to find some consensus. And the feeling is that this can only be brought about through political dialogue.
Kimberly, President Isaac Herzog of Israel was in the U.S. just a few days ago talking to President Biden. Biden has also invited Benjamin Netanyahu, after some lengthy delay, to go to the White House to talk to him. Israel is an important factor in any U.S. election. How is this playing out in U.S. politics?
Well, what this has done is not just divided the population in Israel, it's divided the American population to some extent, certainly the diaspora here in the United States, but also the population in terms of the politicians on Capitol Hill. What we've always seen is kind of an ironclad support for Israel in the U.S. Congress. And already we've seen that fracturing. It began with the concern about the expansion of Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank, and this has only exacerbated things. The plan for judicial reform by Benjamin Netanyahu. There were very vocal opposition by members of the Democratic Party who urged President Biden to do more to try and prevent this. And we've only seen the piling on of that of late. So what we've seen is the president delaying, because of some of these policies, what he considers to be the most extreme right-wing coalition since the 1970s, a delaying of a meeting that is customary between the Israeli leader and the U.S. president since Benjamin Netanyahu came into office in December. Now, of course, that has been extended as an invitation as of last week, but not to the White House, where, in fact, we're not sure when this is going to happen and where. It could even be on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in the fall. So that is deliberate. It's sending a message that the White House doesn't like what's going on, and it feels that its partner, or that is shared view of democracy, is veering in the wrong direction. And that's the message that is being sent.
Yeah, it's those subtle differences that are very significant. Kimberly, thank you very much indeed for explaining that to us. Well, joining us live from Brooklyn, New York, is Libby Lenkinski. She's the Vice President for Public Engagement at the New Israel Fund. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Kimberly was just describing to us the kind of divisions this is creating on Capitol Hill, plus the kind of divisions that are being seen amongst American voters and American Israeli supporters, Israel supporters as well. What's the reaction amongst your members to what's been going on?
Well, as you may know, New Israel Fund and our tens of thousands of supporters around the country and the world have always been an engine of progressive civil society, of liberal democracy in Israel. So this struggle is not new for us, though it is certainly reaching new heights as this extreme right-wing government led by Netanyahu is pushing to truly dismantle the divisions of power that do exist within Israeli democracy, and including today. So we are against what is going on. We are in solidarity with the hundreds and thousands of Israelis who are marching today. And we are in solidarity and in great support of hundreds of progressive nonprofits that are pushing for true democracy for all Israelis and those living under Israel's control.
The Prime Minister Netanyahu himself has a very strong support base within the United States, as does Israel itself and as does the Israeli government, at least in previous iterations. Having said all of that, from your point of view, are you detecting any shifts in emphasis or shifts in support from people who would normally be staunchly behind Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government?
Absolutely. I mean, we know from public opinion research that between 70 and 80% of American Jews largely self-identify as liberal and vote Democrat in American elections. What we're seeing in Israel right now is antithetical to those values. So we are seeing voices in American Jewish leadership and on the streets here coming out not to undo their support for Israel, but to change what it actually means to support the Israel that they know and love. To support the Israel that we know and love means to oppose what this government is doing. Now, for myself and for many supporters of the New Israel Fund, it goes far beyond this judicial coup. We believe that there can be no democracy while there's occupation. We believe in equal rights for all. But what is right in front of us, all of us who are watching and all of us who are there on the ground, is an unprecedented act against democracy. And so we are seeing an outpouring of voices from North America and from around the world, and including on the streets in Israel, against this judicial coup.
Just very briefly, this is only the first part of a series of proposals that are going to be put forward in terms of changing the legal process. What are your expectations for democracy in Israel? Should they all be accepted and all go ahead?
Well, I think what we're seeing on the streets is that large parts of the Israeli population are not going to stand for these kinds of changes. And so if this first peg, this first legislative peg is any indication, I think we are looking at big struggles ahead. And I want to say that while today's news may have sent shockwaves through some parts of the world, this is not the time to despair. Those of us who want to see Israel thriving as a democracy need to take this opportunity for organizing the broadest possible coalition on the ground and around the world that we can to defeat these extreme right-wing elements. From my perspective, we need to expand what that pro-democracy camp looks like to include all those people living in Israel and under Israel's control and all the people who support them. But right now, the first step is to undo some of the harm that's already being planned and that has already been voted in today.
Libby Lenkinski, we appreciate you being with us on Al Jazeera. Thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you for having me.